Just reviewing, my family is in Alaska right now fishing, and my brother-in-law just caught a 40-pound king salmon. The uniqueness of technology is he can send me that photo right now and say, I'm sorry you're in Washington, but oh, by the way, please look at this king salmon I just caught. So thank you all very much. Give me 1 second here. I'd like to welcome the witnesses and thank them for taking the time to testify before the committee today. On July 15th, 2010, just over a year ago, BP finally succeeded in stemming the seemingly never-ending flow of oil of the Deepwater Horizon spill. When the well was plugged, the people of the Gulf Coast and people across the country were mesmerized by the video of the subsea gusher. Were finally able to breathe a collective sigh of relief. Yet Captain Macondo well was not the end of this tragedy. We're still understanding and accounting for its costs, the cost to the environment, the cost to individual people in the Gulf communities, and the cost to their economies. Over 200 million gallons of oil spewed into the Gulf for nearly 3 months, becoming the largest accidental marine oil spill in history. The long-term impacts to the wildlife and ecosystems of the Gulf, while still ill-defined, are sure to be long-lasting. 11 men lost their lives in the explosion that preceded the blowout. Many other lives and livelihoods were and continue to be upended by the spill. Alaskans are sympathize with the Gulf and its plight. We've lived through this before. In 1989, Alaska suffered the Exxon Valdez disaster, then the largest marine oil spill this country had faced. More than 20 years later, Alaskans are still dealing with the aftermath. The environmental impacts are still being monitored and assessed in the waters of the Prince William Sound. Affected Alaskans, many who waited decades before seeing justice in the courts, still feel impacts of the trauma which the spill caused with their communities. While the effects of both spills are tragic, the greatest tragedy in both could and should have been avoided. In each case, the responsible parties cut corners and took unnecessary risks for the promise of greater profits. While the risks taken and the mistakes made leading up to the Deepwater Horizon disaster were reckless and flagrant, our response to it must be thoughtful and measured. The United States needs to put itself firmly on the path to energy security, and we cannot do that without increasing our domestic supply of oil. Oil production must be an integral part of any balanced energy plan, including development of the OCS, whether in the Gulf or the Arctic waters of my state. We need to rededicate ourselves to taking the prudent steps to ensure that the kinds of spills never happen again. Industry needs to vigorously develop and implement better standards and best practices, and regulators must keep them accountable. While they may trust, they must also verify. In an event of the future spill, industry needs to have the capabilities to act swiftly and decisively. We must also make sure our frontline responders, like the Coast Guard and NOAA, have the resources and flexibility and expertise they need to mitigate impacts and get the job done. We must provide local and state stakeholders and responders a strong voice in the process. It's their way of life and prosperity on the line. And we must make sure we have the best science available to guide the response efforts to understand the impacts and to restore the damage that was brought by a spill. These are the reasons we're here today. I'm looking forward to hearing from our witnesses. They come from a varied perspectives, and I hope collectively their insight can put us on the path towards improved spill prevention, response, and restoration. We'll have 2 panels. Before I introduce the first panel, let me ask Senator Wicker, here representing the ranking member, to make his opening.